Hey there and welcome to ArkanSense. Today we'll be talking about medical marijuana in Arkansas. Specifically, we'll be covering the act that passed in 2016, including its history, its passage, and what's happened to it since then. This video is divided up into sections, so if you want to jump straight into one of them, you can click on the time codes down in the description beneath the video. So, let's start with the basics. Marijuana, cannabis, weed, or pot are all nicknames for a plant native to Central and South Asia. The plant naturally contains a number of compounds, particularly tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC, which are classified as psychoactive drugs. Psychoactive drugs are substances which, when put into a human body, cause changes in mood, perception, and thought. This classification includes a large number of drugs, from Benadryl and tobacco to LSD and cocaine, and is not a statement about how dangerous a substance is, just about how it works. As with every drug, marijuana's effects can vary largely based on your own body's chemistry, but the most common positive reactions are feelings of euphoria and relaxation, and heightened sensations such as sight and taste. Neutral or negative side effects can include hunger, dulled awareness of your own body, slowed reaction time, and increased anxiety or irritability. As for its medical uses, because of your feelings of dulled connection or sensation in your body, marijuana can be effective at relieving pain, and is less physically addictive than many of the opioids currently prescribed to patients with chronic pain issues. Marijuana can also decrease nausea and increase appetite, which is great for patients undergoing chemotherapy or treatment for AIDS who often suffer from nausea or undereating. Marijuana has also been found to reduce seizures in certain patients and can decrease the intraocular pressure associated with glaucoma. There is some argument over how effective each of these treatments can be, and that debate is complicated by the fact that in countries like America, where it's illegal, it can be hard to find the funding needed for scientific studies. But why is it illegal? Here in America, hemp was a major cash crop around the time of the Founding Fathers. Hemp is a specific strain of the marijuana plant which is grown for the use of its fibers to make things like paper, clothing, and rope. And through the 1800s, marijuana was used commonly in medicines and tinctures under the name hashish. But in the early 1900s, a combination of increasing laws on food and drug labeling and wide association of marijuana with the ongoing opium epidemic led to a number of laws being passed to restrict or ban its production and sale. In 1937, the U.S. passed the Marijuana Tax Act, which didn't technically make it illegal, but made it so expensive to produce and sell that it usually wasn't worth it. The passage of this act came after a publicity campaign by the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, which associated marijuana use with violence and racial stereotypes. Unlike opium and cocaine, which were still allowed in medications, the Marijuana Tax Act made no exceptions for marijuana in medicines. The American Medical Association came out strongly against the act, but to no avail. That act was overturned in 1970, but replaced with the Controlled Substances Act, which, instead of taxing it into virtual prohibition, made marijuana outright illegal. Under the Controlled Substances Act, drugs were divided into classifications called schedules based on their perceived danger as well as their possible use as a medicine. Cannabis was labeled Schedule 1, meaning that according to this law, it has a high potential for abuse and little to no medical value. This officially outlawed medical marijuana and is still in effect today. But the current legal status of marijuana in America is complicated. When a state passes laws to legalize it for medical or personal use, that just means that state law enforcement won't punish anyone for it. But federal agencies, such as the DEA or FBI, still can. How strictly they enforce those laws largely depends on the administration, with each president appointing or helping to secure funding for many of the people and agencies that make enforcement decisions. So ever since 1996, when California passed the first medical marijuana initiative, it's been up to the federal government how to respond. Under President Clinton, the government stuck largely to trying to revoke the licenses of doctors who prescribed it. But then under President Bush, growers and distributors faced legal action, raids, and property seizure. Shortly after President Obama took office, the government announced it would stop these actions and only pursue people who were violating other federal laws as well. However, there's some debate over how closely they stuck to those promises. Finally, under President Trump, the Justice Department has taken a more firm stance, but with medical marijuana now legal in 33 states and recreational use allowed in 10, large-scale enforcement has become much more difficult. So what happened in Arkansas in 2016? Leading up to the 2016 elections, 23 states allowed for medical use of marijuana. Arkansas had tried to legalize it back in 2012 when a group called ArkanSense for Compassionate Care gathered enough signatures for a ballot initiative. However, it had narrowly narrowly failed with 51.5% voting against it. A Little Rock lawyer who had worked on the 2012 initiative believed the reason it had failed was because it included a provision allowing people with prescriptions to grow marijuana in their own homes. He decided to write his own petition, which was approved to appear on the 2016 state ballot as Issue 6. But around the same time, ArkanSense for Compassionate Care submitted their own measure, and it was approved as Issue 7. As before, their initiative included a grow-at-home clause and also covered more medical conditions. But the most important difference is that Issue 7 was a state statute, meaning that if it passed, the state legislature could overturn it with a 2/3 majority. But Issue 6 was a constitutional amendment, so it couldn't be overturned unless it was with another citizen's petition and vote. Leading up to the election, there was a lot of confusion over whether supporters should vote for only one of the ballot issues or both. But just a few weeks before Election Day, Issue 7 was struck from the ballot. A 5-2 ruling by the Arkansas Supreme Court disqualified over 12,000 signatures, leaving the petition under the required amount. So it was ruled that votes for the measure wouldn't count, though it was too close to the election to actually remove it from the already prepared ballots. Finally, voting day arrived and Issue 6 passed with slightly over 53%. So let's go over what's in the amendment. Under this amendment, medical use of marijuana becomes legal on a state level, though it's acknowledged that it's still illegal nationally. Growers and sellers will need to be licensed by the state, and as long as they are, they're legal too, up to a certain amount. Patients must get their prescriptions from a state-certified doctor, and it must be for one of a specific list of qualifying conditions. The Department of Health has the power to add more qualifying conditions to the list in the future, and also sets the rules for patient registration cards. Meanwhile, the Alcoholic Beverage Control Division gets to set the rules for sellers and growers through the newly established Medical Marijuana Commission. That commission is made up of 5 members, 2 appointed by the highest-ranking member of the Senate, 2 appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 1 appointed by the governor. The law requires that patient registration information is kept confidential and that the Department of Health make yearly reports regarding how many people are using the medical marijuana program. The law also sets certain limits on doctors and patients, including some felony offenses which keep you from being able to receive medical marijuana. Of course, the law includes a provision making sure that all the sales are taxed and sets up how those taxes are spent. The majority of the funds go to state-sponsored job training programs. Of the rest, 30% goes to the state's general revenue fund, and the remaining 10% is divided up among the state agencies involved in the medical marijuana program. Finally, the Medical Marijuana Amendment allows sections of itself to be changed by the legislature with a 2/3 vote, except they cannot make medical marijuana illegal again, and they cannot change the number of allowed growers and sellers. Those 2 things can only be changed by another citizen's petition. The amendment was passed in November of 2016, and the 5 members of the newly formed Medical Marijuana Commission were announced and held their first meeting in December. They also drew straws to decide who would serve full 4-year terms and who would only serve for 2. This was done so the appointments are staggered, with 2 or 3 new commissioners being appointed every other year. The appointments included 3 doctors, 1 attorney, and 1 lobbyist. Originally, the amendment included a provision that the Medical Marijuana Commission would be up and running and ready to take applications 120 days after it went into effect. The legislature quickly changed that to 180 days to give the commission more time, and so the date would align with the start of the state's next fiscal year. Legislators also placed the Medical Marijuana Commission under the purview of the Department of Finance and Administration. As of April 2017, the DFA said they believed that medical marijuana sales would begin sometime around January of 2018. The Medical Marijuana Commission spent the first few months of 2017 creating the rules and application process for growers and distributors. They released these in March, then held public feedback sessions later that month. April and May were spent revising the requirements based on that feedback and putting together the final versions, which were released in June. And June 30th was set as the first day applications for growers and sellers would be accepted, with the window set to end in September. The Medical Marijuana Commission had assumed applications would come in steadily, giving them the full 6 weeks to start sorting through them. But that didn't happen. Of the 300 applicants for cultivation facilities and dispensaries, 200 of them were submitted on the last possible day, September 18th of 2017. Each application was huge, too. They had to include business plans, legal records, financial statements, and more, and the DFA spokesman at the time estimated the applications to range between 500 and 3,000 pages each. When the commission received an application, they would make sure the basics were in order and then send every person listed a fingerprint kit. When completed, they were mailed to the Arkansas State Police, who would run a background check and then pass it on to the FBI to do the same. The last-minute rush had created a bottleneck, so the state police couldn't process the fingerprints as quickly as they'd originally intended. As a result, the commission announced they were moving back all of their estimated dates and deadlines by about a month. In the meantime, the commission was busy creating a version of each application redacting any personally identifying falsifying information. This is important because the applications had to be made available to the public through the Freedom of Information Act. But since marijuana is still illegal federally, many of the applicants might not want their names publicly associated with marijuana-related businesses. So this is what the Commission was doing in October and November. We are now 1 year out from the initial passage of the amendment. In December of 2017, the Commission announced they'd finished the initial vetting and would move on to scoring and approving the applications, starting with the growers. Of the 100 applications for growers, only the top 5 scores would receive their license, with the possibility for 3 more later if there was enough demand. The scores would be based on a 500-point system, 100 points possible from each of the 5 commissioners. On February 26, 2018, the Commission announced who would receive the 5 cultivation licenses. They said they expected to certify those results in March, and then announced the dispensary licenses in April or May. One of the applicants, who came in a very close 6th place, decided to appeal their decision, a move that was more or less common practice. Less expected, though, was the protest that they filed shortly after, claiming that the 5th place finisher had provided the Commission with false information, including falsifying qualifications for some of its staff. Also, shortly after the first 5 license winners were announced, rumors began circulating that some of them were delinquent on their taxes. Those rumors grew loud enough that a member of the State House of Representatives sent a letter requesting that the DFA confirm all top 10 scoring applicants were up to date on their taxes before awarding any licenses. The Medical Marijuana Commission was all set to meet on March 14th and finalize their scoring decisions. But that morning, a Pulaski County judge ruled that the 6th place finisher had sufficient evidence and standing to stop the licensing process until there had been a legal hearing. Most people involved assumed the judge would set a date for proceedings when both sides could state their case. Instead, a few weeks later, he issued a judgment declaring the entire scoring process null and void. He did this for 3 reasons. First, the rules of the Medical Marijuana Commission require that an applicant have previous experience with a business, specifically one which had not had its license revoked. But the Commission forgot to put that requirement on the application form, and it turns out 3 of the 5 groups approved for licenses had at least one co-owner who'd previously had a business license revoked because of unpaid taxes. Second, the rules required that land proposed for grow houses had to be at least 3,000 feet from any school, church, or daycare at the date of the application. However, the Commission had not actually verified this and had just taken the applicants at their word, breaking their own rules that the proof had to be verified. And finally, 2 of the 5 commissioners were found to have connections to winning applicants strong enough to give the appearance of possible bias. One commissioner was a lawyer who had previously represented one of the winning applicants. Meanwhile, a second commissioner was a doctor who had regularly referred patients to a physician that was part owner of one of the applicants. That commissioner gave that application his highest score, an almost perfect 98. The judge noted that this score stood out because most scores given by that commissioner were much lower. In fact, outside of his top 2 scores, he'd given every other applicant a 77.5 or lower. With the scoring process declared null and void, the Commission would need to either get the ruling overturned or start the whole process over again. With a county judge and a state commission at odds, there's only one way to resolve things: the state Supreme Court. The Attorney General filed an appeal on May 10th, and the Arkansas Supreme Court held testimony on June 7th, 2018, almost exactly a year and a half after the amendment had initially passed. There was a hitch, though. As with any case, both sides submitted their legal briefs to the court in advance of the hearing. The state had made the case that the Commission's ratings were not arbitrary and that the commissioners themselves had not been biased or improper in any way. But then, in between the day that they filed their brief and the day of the hearing, one member of the Medical Marijuana Commission admitted to the state that an applicant had offered him a bribe. He hadn't reported the bribe at the time, but claimed he hadn't taken it. However, when the state reviewed the scores he'd given, his scores for that applicant were significantly higher. The state wrote a letter to the Supreme Court revealing this evidence, but asking them that it be sealed until the case was concluded. Instead, one of the Supreme Court justices published it. Despite all of this, on June 21st, the Arkansas Supreme Court overruled the county judge's decision. This wasn't on the basis of incorrect information, though. Instead, the state Supreme Court ruled that the county judge didn't have the power to make or enforce his original decision. So just days later, the Commission awarded the 5 grower licenses to the same 25 applicants they'd intended to 3 months before. And in July, they moved on to reviewing and scoring applications for sellers. However, after all they'd gone through, rather than grading the applications themselves, the commission decided to hire an independent third party to handle it. Even though this would mean a delay in the process while they figured out who to hire, a process that avoided accusations of bias also lessened the likelihood of appeals and lawsuits later. It's worth noting that this decision passed with a vote of 3-4 and 2 against, and the 2 who voted against it were the same 2 commissioners named in the earlier lawsuit as having an appearance of bias. In August of 2018, after an open bidding process for the contract, the Medical Marijuana Commission hired a public consulting group out of Boston to review and score the 200 applications for sellers. That review process began in October and is expected to be completed in December of 2018, the month this episode is being recorded. In the meantime, at a meeting in November, the commission checked in with the 5 approved growers to see when they expect to be up and running. One group has been delayed and forced to move their grow location after it was discovered it was too close to a college that also hosts some high school classes. But the other 4 cultivators all say that they're on schedule and will have their first batch ready for shelves by mid-2019. Finally, as we move into 2019, 2 of the members of the Medical Marijuana Commission are at the end of their terms. Additionally, one of the commissioners who had a 4-year term announced that he would be stepping down voluntarily. All 3 replacements will be appointed after the new state Congress is sworn in. The new Senate President pro temp will be appointing 2 members, while the Speaker of the House will get to pick 1. And as for the allegations of score bias and corruption against the commission, those claims are currently under investigation, with the first findings expected to be released in early 2019. And that's it. We're done. So what's the takeaway here? Well, the reason that Arkansas's medical marijuana has taken so long to be implemented isn't because of any interference by legislators, no matter what you may have read on Facebook. The largest delays were caused by a majority of applications arriving on the final possible day, the county judges ruling against the Marijuana Commission and its subsequent appeal, and the extra time needed to take and review bids for the third-party contracts to grade the dispensary applications. And luckily, it does look like the worst of the delays are done. Growers are already growing, and the use of an independent commission to pick the best distributors means another process-stopping lawsuit is far less likely. Distributors will probably receive their licenses by early 2019 and start selling as soon as the growers harvest their first crop sometime in the summer. And while 2.5 years is a long time to wait, it's also worth remembering that at some point in 2019, someone will be the first person in Arkansas to be prescribed state-approved marijuana in over half a century. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more videos like it, make sure to subscribe. And if you want to help make them happen, please support ArkanSense on Patreon. Patreon is like Netflix or Hulu, but for artists. Each month you pay a specific amount to support me continuing to make content. The exact amount is up to you, but bigger rewards get you bigger perks. Speaking of perks, this month the show got its first GoRo level sponsor, Zach Green. For his donation, Zach gets to pick the topic of an upcoming video. Thank you so much for your support. And thanks also to Wampus Cat level supporter Don Hughes and all the other supporters as well. If you want to support the show, check out the link below, and thank you for watching.